President Cyril Ramaphosa's intervention in Mozambique has been welcomed by many in that country. Ramaphosa sent his envoy, Dr Sydney Mufamadi, to Mozambique to interact with role players. Meanwhile, the leader of the new official opposition, Venancio Mondlane, has announced that the protests will resume today. Mozambique has been experiencing political and security instability since the announcement of the October election results. And so now for the latest, let's cross to SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, good morning, and thank you for making time to be with us at this hour. We're obviously just looking at the situation unfolding in Mozambique. What is that update? We obviously know President Cyril Ramaphosa had sent, his envoy, Dr Sydney Mufamadi, was already met with some of the leaders. Has there been any feedback on how those interactions are going as we speak?
We know that the former minister, who is President Ramaphosa's special advisor on security, did speak to the president of Mozambique, the outgoing president, Filipe Nyusi, on the situation in Mozambique. And according to our sources, he pointed out that everything is under control, and whatever eventuality, they'll be able to manage the situation ahead of the inauguration of the president-elect, Daniel Chapo. And therefore, the envoy would then have to also engage other stakeholders just to get a sense of what's happening. As you know, that Mozambique is our neighbor. However, South Africa cannot dictate to Mozambique what needs to happen in relation to what has transpired in that country, where the opposition has rejected the results. And therefore, when you know the issue of relations with countries, no country can dictate to another country what must happen in that country. Only the people of that country have a right to do so. Other countries can give support to whatever processes that are unfolding in trying to find a solution to the current tension and the current standoff. But there's not much that South Africa can do. The country can only look after its borders to ensure that there's no spillover. As you saw that there were people, the prisoners, escaped from prison, and we are told that much as some were apprehended, but others are still out there, as the police in that country have indicated, so that you don't see those criminals crossing borders to South Africa. And we saw the Net Joint issuing a statement in terms of how they have tightened the border. That would include police, the defense force, national security, and of course border management, a team that is under the Department of Home Affairs that is responsible for the borders.
Sophie, with the opposition having rejected the results and Mondlane now saying or announcing that they will resume with protests, any updates on that front? What can we expect as the day progresses in Mozambique?
Well, we are expecting that today those who would have agreed to his announcement that the strike must resume would do so, but we don't know. Normally, they start in the afternoon, because remember the agreement was that during the day there shouldn't be any protests, so that you can continue with economic activity, so that the economy doesn't collapse. But we've seen in previous times where this announcement, when it was made, they didn't wait for the afternoon in some areas. So as we speak, we are waiting to hear whether we will see Mozambicans, those who are supporting the call by Mondlane, engaging in that strike or those protests. And remember, he also made a call that there shouldn't be destruction of property. Yes. And also looting. And therefore, we don't know whether that will hold when people engage in a strike or protest or take to the streets in a form of a protest.
All right, so Sophie, we're certainly monitoring those developments. Just another story that happened overnight. The U.S. former President Jimmy Carter passed away last night at the age of 100 years old, the longest living president in the United States of America's history. Talk to us about how he will be remembered, especially in the African continent.
Well, let's look at him. He was the president of the United States of America, and therefore I think those who agreed with his leadership would celebrate his life, even though there are some who have reservations in terms of when he was the president. But the reality is he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and he continued with that, championing the human rights in that country and outside that country, very vocal. I mean, he was very vocal on what was happening in the Middle East and supporting the two-state solution. The second issue, he was involved with the UN Habitat, where he was building houses with his foundation, helping in terms of ensuring the shelter, particularly for the poor around the world. He came to South Africa and Cape Town in Johannesburg doing that work. And he was part of a group that is called the Elders. You'd recall that that group was established or started during the late former President Nelson Mandela's retirement activities, where these elders or the former leaders or influential people around the world came together to form this group with the aim of ensuring that they do engage in giving direction on global issues. The issue of Palestine comes to mind, the issue of conflict in other areas, and also, just speaking out when there is violation of human rights, and also ensuring that with their foundations or whatever they are doing in retirement, they promote the human rights culture. And therefore, he died being a person who was involved in that. But we know that when you look at President Trump, his views might be a bit different, because he was quite critical of President Trump's tenure. And as now the incoming president, again, it remains to be seen what is going to be Trump's stage. But we know that the outgoing President Joe Biden has indicated that the state funeral will be on the 9th of January. And therefore, fortunately, then he will preside over the funeral, because Trump will take over much later, mid-January.
All right, Sophie Mokoena, thank you for joining us at this hour and for that update.